Hey guys, today we're going to be replacing the carburetor on a TrailMaster mid-size go-kart, and we're going to take you to the process here and show you how just to do that. The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure your fuel is off at the engine here, and you also want to make sure your fuel valve is off underneath the fuel tank here. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your air filter cover off by removing this first nut that is on top of the air filter, and remove the air filter cover itself. And then we have another wing nut that is just underneath the air filter cover here, and by removing this we're going to be able to remove the air filter. This air filter base here will then come off, and then we want to take a 10mm wrench and we want to take the base of the air filter housing off here. We are also going to take these two 10mm nuts that are holding the air filter housing off and holding the carburetor on. The next thing that we're going to do is remove our choke cable. After removing this housing here, our choke cable just fell off there, as you see. And you want to remove your choke cable from the top of your carburetor here where it clamps in. And then we want to take our two nuts that we had, and if we put one of our nuts on backwards on one of this outside, this most rear thread here, screw, and we screw the other one on top of it. What we're trying to do is we're trying to jam the two together. And if we take our two wrenches and jam the two together, we will be able to remove this stud here. And sometimes it's in the way of being able to pull a carburetor out where the carburetor might hit the rear frame. We're going to take a pair of pliers here and remove our governor spring that is hooked up, and take notice of what hole that is in, and also remove the throttle linkage that is on top of it, and also our fuel line that is coming into the carburetor here. You're going to remove the fuel clamp, and then also sometimes it'll come off together, and sometimes you'll have to remove the fuel line after you move the clamp up. And if you take this hose here or this screw here and stick it back in the fuel line, it'll keep the fuel from flowing out, what's left in the fuel line there. And here we have the carburetor completely off. And you do want to make sure the gasket is still on and the gasket is in good condition here. And if it is, we can go ahead and put our new carburetor on. And basically we're going to do everything in the opposite that we took it off. So we're going to go ahead and take our fuel line and put it back on, and we want to make sure our fuel clamp does get all the way down on the fuel line, on the nipple coming off of the carburetor, or it's going to be leaking. And then next we're going to hook up our linkage here. Your thicker linkage there goes in the top, and then the governor linkage spring there, it'll go in the smaller hole. And again, make sure whenever you do take it off that you notice what holes these come out of. There's not too many holes, there's only two holes there. And so it's kind of hard to get it backwards, but it is possible. And we do want to make sure it did not fall out of the linkage on the governor there. And we want to make sure it is free and not being bound up by anything. Next, going to make sure that our gasket is still in place and in line, and make sure when we go to put this stud back in that we are catching the gasket, and the gasket is been placed and hasn't fell down somewhere. Sometimes they fall down where you can't see them, so make sure the gasket there did not fall down. And we're going to tighten this stud back down. Don't over torque it, but we are going to tighten this stud back down, and then we're going to take our two 10mm wrenches and unjam these two nuts here and take them back off. Next, we want to put our gasket plate or insulator back on and make sure it is aligned correctly. And again, if you make sure that you would pay attention to the way that it comes off here, because it only will, if you put it upside down or you put it on backwards, your cart is not going to run good. Next, we're going to go get our air filter base and reinstall it. We can put the two screws back on it as well. We want to get our choke linkage and put it back in the choke on the carburetor here. And then when we put our filter base back on, we want to make sure that we get the hose here. There's a big black hose here, thick hose, and that hose is a vent hose for the crankcase. And also we want to make sure that we get our throttle or our linkage here for our choke back underneath the air filter base, and that it is getting tightened back down with the air filter base. After that, we are going to go ahead and put our two nuts back on for the air filter housing there. And then once all three of these are hand tight, we'll go ahead and tighten all three of these down. All right, this time we can go ahead and put the base of the air filter housing back on here, and then we can go ahead and put our air filter back on. And then we do want to make sure that we get the wing nut back on top of the air filter. If you're missing this wing nut, we can provide you another one at gokartmasters.com for these threads here. But you do want to make sure that that is tightened down. If you just put the one back on the air filter top, then your air filter is not going to be sealed, and in dusty condition you are going to ruin this engine. So make sure that you get the wing nut back on the air filter and then back on this air filter top as well. Guys, we're then going to turn our fuel back on, both on our carburetor and on our fuel tank. And guys, we hope this helped. If you have any questions, we'll link to the parts in the description below. But if you have any questions, please reach out to us at gokartmasters.com.